Howdy folks, and hang on, which month is it? June. Yes, welcome to the Salt Mines Discord Q&A for June. Let's stop and think there for a second. Yeah, it is definitely June. I'm going to preempt the first question. Yes, did nothing to. I am recording. We've checked the recording twice. I know it's working this time. For those of you who turned up live, nice to see you all. I'll get on to your questions just in a moment. For everybody who's watching this is Monday's Mingles with Jingles. Hope you all had a great weekend. Now forget it because it's Monday. Before we start, just a quick, because I haven't really talked about this in the last couple of episodes of Mingles with Jingles, my health, because that's a good sign. If I'm not talking about it, that means there's nothing wrong. And it's been a month now since the surgery, and I got up this morning and realised, after an hour of pottering around and making coffee and toast, getting everything set up, that I was in no pain whatsoever. And I've realised I've actually been like that for a couple of days. Oh, Akazuki's crying about something. I don't know if you can all hear it. Oh, you probably caught that one. Yes. Never worked with children or animals, kids. Basically, I'm fine. The only real issue at the moment is going for a dump can get a bit dramatic. But even that, I mean, I've basically got normal bowel function back. The wounds have all closed up. Moving around doesn't hurt. I've got a lot more energy. I think as a result of this bowel cancer surgery and also the diabetes diagnosis, which has forced me to moderate my lifestyle a lot, I'll probably be a lot fitter and healthier at 60 than I am now at 54. So I've been extraordinarily lucky, not just in catching it early, but also quick and easy surgery. And the lifestyle changes that it's enforced on me mean that I'm actually feeling a lot better than I was a year ago. So I guess it's all good. Anyway, moving on to the questions. The first one comes through, well, actually the first one came from Did Nothing To, and yes, Did Nothing To, I am recording. Second question from Yalara. Greetings, O great lord of the salt mines and master of the noble skill of jingles landings. It's been a while since I did it. Well, actually, I suppose if you watch the Pacific Drive videos, yeah, there's been a lot of jingles landings in those. I think in the latest one, I actually fell off a cliff. Anyway, by coincidence, today's recording is also the Italian commemoration of the foundation of the Republic in 1948. Didn't Garibaldi have something to do with that? Or am I thinking, or am I like 50 years later? Oh, whatever. I'm probably wrong. And I'm sure people will let me know in the comments. On this day, we have a military parade where our famous formation of Bersaglieri performed the notorious fanfare at running pace. Did you ever watch such an event? I didn't, but performing a fanfare at running pace, that sounds like something I should watch. More in general, can you tell us an anecdote of your life involving Italian military personnel? I can, actually. Obviously, I was in the Royal Navy and did a lot of Mediterranean deployments, and we worked with the Italian Navy on a couple of occasions. Akazuki's, I don't know if you can hear this, she is going absolutely, she's having a massive case of the zoomies on the staircase. Anyway, the thing that I remember in particular about the Italian Navy, holy shit, the food was amazing. I mean, it was really, really good. Lots of pasta, unsurprisingly, because, you know, it's cheap and it's a great source of energy, so it's an ideal food. But it wasn't, it was prepared really, really well. All of the food, the seasoning, the flavours was just incredible, and there was a load of it. And that's the one thing that I remember most about working with the Italian military. I mean, aside from they were being just really, really friendly and very accommodating for those of us who were on board their ships, but the food was astonishingly good. I was about to say the same with the French. But while I have worked with the French, I never got to eat any of their food. Although if you've ever read about any of the Free French regiments and divisions in the Second World War, the regimental commanders, the colonel, you know, they always, it's amazing. If you ever read about the, I can't remember which division it was during the North African campaign, but they're in the middle of the desert, right? And the Italians in particular, their logistics was absolutely terrible. It wasn't that, I mean, the supplies that they got, they didn't get a lot, and most of what they got, the supply officers were so corrupt they would sell it off, so they got nothing. But the French, they would take, the commander of the regiment would have his own chef. He took his own chef into battle with him. They would take like dining tables, tableware, everything in the baggage train with the armoured regiment, so that they could always have a good dinner every day, regardless of where they were or what was happening. Some of the stories about how the French catered for their troops, for their officers, but the rank and file ate quite well too. But if you ever read about French World War II army units, the way that they looked after the feeding of the troops and the officers was just ridiculous. I was actually quite lucky when it came to. Actually, I've just realised there's another question further on, so I'll hold that because it's related when I answer that question. But we'll move on to the next one. But yeah, absolutely, Italians. The food was incredible. Next question from, it's a Rorix 78, light tank driver extraordinaire. Greetings, mighty gnome overlord. Thank you for all the replay features. My question is, did you watch the new Fallout TV show? If yes, what did you think of it? Also, is Rita free? I need more crew members for all my light tanks. I did watch the new Fallout TV show. I didn't have great expectations because I've been burned before when it comes to TV show adaptations of pop culture stuff that I am quite fond of, but I actually quite like the new Fallout TV show. The special effects, the VFX in it were not obvious and well done. I quite enjoyed the story. The cast was great, and it just worked. There was nothing about it that leaped out and said this was designed by committee. The way the later seasons of The Mandalorian ended up, where the Mandalorian ended up becoming a supporting character in his own TV show. Yeah, I really like the Fallout TV show. I don't want to spoil anything, but if you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend it. What was it on? Was it on Amazon? Was it Amazon or Netflix? Either way, it's not something you have to pay to watch. But yeah, I thought it was really, really good, and I definitely recommend it. And if anybody's got any other recommendations for TV shows to watch, please let me know in the comments, because I'm running out of stuff to watch at the moment. But I can definitely recommend the Fallout TV show. I thought it was really, really good. Next question comes from Basement Jesus. Dear Overlord of Daves and Rear Admiral of Davies, I see you're a person of great culture from the amount of figures you have, along with other memorabilia. I myself am a collector. Have you ever considered doing a video on your collection and talking about some of your most prized or special ones? It would be nice to see all that you have. Pretty much every single thing that I have, I did an unboxing video of. I haven't done any of those in years because I've stopped buying stuff because I've run out of space. I've got a lot of. Basically, I want my living room to look somewhere that an adult lives, and so I don't want toys covering every wall. So I had a couple of display shelves, and they'll line the entrance hall, which is kind of self-defeating because anybody who comes in the house, the first thing they see is all of these figures. Although in the living room, I do have the Dark Rider of Sauron, which is one of the first things that I bought, and is absolutely huge. It's like 4 feet tall, massive, mounted ring wraith, and then Saruman's next to him, and I've got all the Lord of the Rings stuff on display in the living room, but mostly in the living room. It's DVDs, Blu-rays, and books all in the cases. So it does look vaguely like somewhere an adult actually lives, rather than a man-child. And then down here in my my office/recording studio, I've got stuff like my E11 carbine, my Star Trek phaser pistol, my helmet collection, an alien skull, all that sort of stuff down here. And lots and lots and lots of unpainted and unassembled models that I'm probably never going to get around to doing because I'm crap. And then, of course, when I moved in and I had everything set up, I did the house tour video where, in particular, I showed everything in the display cases. So I have sort of done that sort of thing before. It's all up there on YouTube if you just want to look for it. Anyway, thanks for the question. Moving on. Next question comes from Dusty. He says, hello, Jingles. With your stay in hospital reminded me of my own sliced leg artery dude from a few Q&As ago here, if you remember me. I'm glad to see you're doing well. And reminded me of the absolutely appalling hospital food I had to stomach. What was some of the worst food you've had to eat? And the story behind it. Well, yeah, the food that I had in the hospital. The thing is, because it was bowel surgery, I couldn't eat anything. I think I was on liquids only for the first day. And then on the second and third day, I was allowed jelly and yogurt, and that was it. But I just wasn't hungry. I had no appetite whatsoever. By the third day, I was allowed a piece of chicken with some sauce. And this was all because you have to understand, I mean, there's thousands of people in the hospital as well. Oh, hello, Akazuki. Wow, she is making a noise. What? No, you're not having foodies. I don't know if you can all hear in the background, otherwise this is going to sound very, very strange. What was I talking about? Hospital food, yeah. I mean, they've got to cater for like maybe 1,000, maybe 1,500 people every day. So they just buy stuff that can be tossed into a microwave, heated up and gotten out onto the wards as quickly as possible. 10, 15 years ago, microwave food was absolutely bloody awful, but these days it's not that bad. So yeah, I couldn't really complain about the hospital food. I lost 10 kilograms in weight, by the way, from a 4-day stay in hospital. My probably worst food experience was in the Navy. It was, thankfully, I wasn't actually a member of the ship's company, so I didn't have to put up with the absolutely appallingly bad chefs that they had on board that ship. Which ship was it? I can't remember the name of the ship. It might have been, it was some Type 42 destroyer. I can't remember which one it was. And it was in a refit in Portsmouth, and I can't remember who or what I was working for at the time, but I was basically sent on board the ship during the day just to help out with the refit. And then I had my cabin at HMS Nelson, which is where I was actually based. And that meant that I only had to eat lunch on board that ship. And I went to lunch once, and it was just awful. It was really, really bad. You could tell that the chefs just didn't give a shit. I tried lunch again the next day, and for the remaining 3 weeks that I was working on board that ship every day, I just went to the naffy, I bought a sausage roll, and that was it. But I mean, that was not the normal experience in the Royal Navy. I mean, our food wasn't nearly as good as the food that the Italian Navy got to have, but it was still usually pretty good. On HMS Newcastle in particular, the chefs, you know, it's not difficult to just, all you have to do is just give a shit. In particular, I remember when I was working in the unit personnel office at HMS Nelson, because I was on board, what was the ship? Type 22 frigate based in Devonport, HMS Coventry, when I was a radio operator. And my best friend on board the ship, Dixie, was a gunner, and we were both what they call recatting. So I was going to be a writer. I decided, I hate being a radio operator. I want to transfer to the writer branch. Dixie wasn't a huge fan of being a gunner, and his passion was cooking, so he decided he was going to branch transfer to chef. So we both did our retraining at the same time, and we both got sent to work at HMS Nelson, him in the wardroom, and then in the main galley, and me in the unit personnel office. And you could tell, because Dixie gave a shit, you could tell when Dixie was doing breakfast in the main galley, because he would do things that other chefs didn't bother doing, like he would turn the bacon over and the sausages so they got grilled on both sides. So if the bacon or the sausage was done properly, you know, minimum level of effort, you know, it doesn't just halfway through, just turn them over. But he was the only chef that bothered, so you could always tell when Dixie was doing breakfast in the main galley. So yeah, I wish I could remember the name of the ship that it was on in refit, but the food there was just dreadfully bad. I mean, how do you mess up a cheese and ham sandwich? But somehow these chefs found a way of doing that. They were that bad. Anyway, next question from Tank 50 US. Oh wow, he's written a novel. Dear Mighty Overlord Jingles, an odd question and a small second question. I know you're not exactly big into furries. Oh dear. Look, furries are people too, okay? But as a furry artist, okay. I was curious to draw an image of you as an anthropomorphic baryonyx, because it's a British dinosaur. That's right, yeah, I've played... the only reason I know what a baryonyx is because I played the Jurassic World games. And it's aquatic, and if I recall correctly, you like fish, and the Barry was a fish eater. Also, I absolutely suck at drawing humans. Well, that's fair enough. With my own mum as a dragon, my friend's mum as a tiger or a raptor, no, it's not that kind of image. The images of the characters go in Office Space printer on a lot. I wonder how many people get that reference. On a large crab. The plan was to make this a charity auction piece for a fur convention, with the proceeds going to cancer research. My own mum beat a case of uterine cancer. Oh, congratulations. My friend's mum made a single-digit chance breast cancer, her bitch. Obviously, both are still around today. I could still make it a charity piece as a local convention later this year that does a charity auction. But before I proceed, I'd like your permission. Yeah, absolutely, 100%, go for it. Now for the small second question. If you could legally own any historic firearm, what would it be? I recently became the proud owner of an SMLE number 1 Mark III. Oh, the short magazine Lee Enfield, World War One era, yeah. It's made in England and shipped to South Africa. My ultimate dream is to pick an M1 Garand as one allowed his grandfather to come home from his 1944 and 1945 European tour. Oh yeah, absolutely. Those would be it for me as well. I wouldn't like to have to choose between them. But a short magazine Lee Enfield, what a rifle. I actually have, or had, a deactivated one. It was all fully working. You could cycle the bolt and you could strip it, but it was just, the barrel had been filled. Lovely, lovely piece of kit. Such a good rifle. And of course the M1 Garand is just legendary. It's probably the best infantry rifle of the Second World War. It was just an amazing piece of kit. So yeah, those would be for me as well. Short magazine, Lee Enfield, and an M1 Garand. Next question comes from Minertree93. Dear Overlord Jingles, I'll be much nicer than last time. What is your favourite British isekai? I'm going to have to look that one up. He's given some examples. The Chronicles of Narnia, Through the Looking Glass, Alice in Wonderland, or some option that I didn't list. Okay, hang on a second. I'm just going to just make sure I get this. I'm just going to go and Google isekai. A fantasy subgenre featuring stories in which ordinary people are... Okay, yeah. What was the one? Because it used to be a very... You don't really see it that much anymore. The examples that he's given. Chronicles of Narnia, written by C.S. Lewis. Alice in Wonderland. Possibly also written by C.S. Lewis, can't remember. But those were Victorian. And that's where the whole genre sort of started. But it was quite popular in the 80s and 90s as well. And I'm trying to remember, wasn't Stephen Donaldson? Oh, no, I hate it when this happens. When you know exactly, I can tell you the plot, but I cannot remember the title of the book, and I cannot remember the names of the characters or the author. But yeah, very, very... Again, it's not the sort of thing that you really see anymore. Nowadays, fantasy novels, everybody in them, like Game of Thrones, for example, they're all from that world, rather than normal people from modern day world transported, like in Through the Looking Glass or Chronicles of Narnia, to a fantasy world and having to adapt and become a hero within it. This is going to wind me up. I'll try to. I'm going to have to stick this one as a comment when this goes up as Mingles with Jingles. But there was one that was really, really good that I read in the 80s, and I cannot remember what it was. But yeah, worthy mentions obviously Chronicles of Narnia and Alice in Wonderland, but the one that made the biggest impact on me, and I'm really struggling because I hate it when this happens because I remember the novel, I can remember what the characters did, I can't remember any of their names, I can't remember who wrote it, can't remember the name of the book. It was actually a series of books. But I'll try to remember I'll look this up and I'll answer this one in a comment when this goes up as Mingles with Jingles. Oh, and bonus question. When it comes to slapping some sense into people, do you give them the palm or the backhand? Oh, the palm. Have you ever seen slap fights? Professional, competitive slap fights. Holy shit. You can look this up on YouTube. My God. You'd think, getting slapped isn't that bad. Better than getting punched. No. No. Google it. Look up your videos on YouTube of this sort of thing going on. An open-handed slap can be absolutely lethal. Anyway, and the backhand, you don't run the risk of breaking your knuckles. So, open-handed every time. Make-A-Wish Foundation says, hello, Akazuki. Hi, her human. Glad you have the scary sea shit behind you. By the way, did you at least get rid of smoking? Kind of not. Although I'm smoking way less than I did. I used to go through like a packet a day. And now, at most, 5. Certainly when I came out of hospital, I just didn't feel like it. But yeah, it's my only vice, and I'm addicted. I don't really want to stop. I wish I'd never. It's one of those things. I wish I'd never started, but I really just don't feel like stopping. But I have definitely cut down, along with everything else, like cutting sugar out of my diet and things like that. So anyway, the actual question: how's your modelling corner going? Any plans on picking that up again? And how are you with Lego? Because their patent ran out. Ooh, did it? and there are affordable ship, plane, and tank models now. Series 3. Oh, Three Body Problem. Oh, yes. Yeah, I'll watch that. It is very, very good. And I do, and he also says it's a good time to rewatch MASH. So for those of you who maybe aren't old enough to remember MASH, I know what it is. It was a comedy. Well, it was a movie. Well, first it was a book, and then it was a movie, and then they made a TV show out of it. The movie starred Donald Sutherland, and then the TV show was Alan Alda, and a whole bunch of other people. And if you can't remember or never heard of MASH, you probably don't even know who Alan Alda is. But it was basically a comedy set in a mobile army surgical hospital during the Korean War, and it was absolutely hilarious. The characters were all fantastic. The cast were amazing. It ran for something like 10 years. And it's all available on Amazon Prime and possibly also Netflix. I think I actually bought the DVD box set as well. But yeah, MASH is it's so very good. And Three Body Problem, the Netflix show, was excellent as well. And who was it I saw? Oh, that was it. Yeah, I can't remember the name of the actress. But the one who developed the nanofiber filament in Three Body Problem. I saw her pop up in Guy Ritchie's Ministry of Gentlemanly Warfare. And she was quite good in that. But I really didn't. It was a real shame. I can't. Oh, that was it. Yeah, I was browsing YouTube one day, and the movie was on YouTube, the entire movie, and not like shaky cam in the back of the cinema quality. And I thought, I'm watching this before it gets taken down, because I was really looking forward to this movie coming out. Because I'm a massive fan of Henry Cavill, and I love Alan Ritchson. And I said, oh, and she's in it as well. She was really good in Three Body Problem. So I added it to my watch later list. I went to bed that night and I whipped out the old phone and I watched the movie, and it just wasn't very good. Which was, I really wanted to like it. And there were some great moments in it, some great set pieces. Some of it was really funny, and some of the action was really good. But the plot, even though it was based on a true story, it was just the way they did it, just not believable. And again, I don't really want to go into detail, even though the real story was unbelievable, but they did actually do it. But without spoiling the movie for you, I can't really explain why the way they did it was just completely unbelievable. But yeah, I mean, if you've seen the movie, do let me know in the comments what you thought of it, because it wasn't terrible, but it just could have been easily so much better, which is a real disappointment. But, getting to watch it for free on YouTube was always nice. Anyway, next question. Oh, actually, I never actually answered your first question. Modelling corner. Yeah, it's terrible. The pile of shame. I'm at least not adding to the pile of shame, but I haven't done anything in about a year. Yeah, if I run out of stuff to watch on Netflix and Amazon, I can always... Because it's not like I have a shortage of stuff to build. I just can't really motivate myself to getting around to doing it, because there's always something else. In the moment, World of Warcraft Cataclysm Classic has eaten up all of my time. I've got 2 level 85 characters, and I'm about to get my 3rd. So that's basically what's using up most of my spare time at the moment. And how are you with Lego? The second part of your question. Never really been a fan, but now that their patents run out, and affordable ship, plane, and tank models, that's might be something worth looking into. Anyway, moving on. Next question. AMMC Woods M6. Jingles, what was your favourite ship that you served aboard and why? Also, during your time in the Royal Navy, what naval bases other than Royal Navy ones did you find to be the most interesting or impressive? And are there any that you wished you could have visited? Really glad you're doing better. Thank you. Favourite ship? HMS Newcastle, Type 42 destroyer. It was not the only Type 42 I served on. I also did HMS Southampton and HMS Nottingham. Did a year and a half on both of those. But HMS Newcastle, while it was basically the same ship, although there are always small differences, even ships of the same class and batch, there are always some small differences. But it was the ship's company, it was the crew. The Southampton was all right, there's nothing wrong with it. The Nottingham was a horrible ship to be on, because the captain was an utter wanker. But on board HMS Newcastle, it was like the Goldilocks zone. It's not that there weren't any arseholes on board. There were. It's just none of them were in positions of authority where they could make your life miserable. Every captain that I had on that ship was amazing. Every executive officer that I had on that ship was amazing. Working in the ship's office, Every petty officer writer and every chief writer, with one notable exception, were all amazing. Everybody they worked with was just fantastic. It was just such a good ship to serve on. We worked hard, but we played hard. And everybody got along with each other. And I loved that ship so much that after my first draft, it was working as a writer, you would do like 18 months on board a ship, and then you would do 2 years in a shore base. So it was pretty good. You spent more time ashore than you did at sea. But when I left that ship, I got sent to HMS Nelson Unit Personnel Office, which is like, if you're a writer in the Royal Navy, Nelson Unit Personnel Office is the gulag, right? It's the worst place to work. And one of the things that you could do was fill out what they call a drafting preference form. So you could specify which base port you wanted to be drafted to. So Portsmouth, because I love Type 42s. I mean, they were old ships. You have to bear in mind, right, the Type 42 destroyers were built around the 909 radar and the Sea Dart missile system. And their basic design was, in the event of the Cold War turning hot, every Type 42 destroyer had what was known as a UK air defence zone. And they would go to that zone and shoot down Tu-95 Bear bombers incoming with nukes. So the Sea Dart was designed to intercept high altitude, large, slow-flying targets, and it was really, really good at that. Of course, by the time I joined the Navy, it was all sea-skimming missiles, and it was not very good at doing that, which is, of course, why we got rid of them and replaced them with the Type 45s. So, operationally, they weren't actually that good ships, and they were old, and they were hard to take care of and look after, but I just loved them. There was something about those ships that was amazing. But one of the other things that I got completely sidetracked there, as well as specifying your base port, and the reason why I was talking about Type 42s was you could also specify what type of ship, Type 42 destroyer, Type 22 frigate, Type 23 frigate, what type of ship you wanted. So Type 42 destroyer, because they were all based in Portsmouth as well. And then you could be even more specific and say which individual ship you wanted. So HMS Newcastle. And then there was also a box you could tick to state whether or not you were an early out-of-turn volunteer for sea service, which meant if you ticked that box, even though you were supposed to do 2 years ashore before going back to sea, if the chance came up to get your preference, would you skip your shore time in order to go back to sea? And I went, yes. So the guy that replaced me in the ship's office on HMS Newcastle was an utter arsehole. This was shortly after, because it used to be, well, not illegal, but you weren't allowed to be in the military and a homosexual. Keep it to yourself, and nobody gave a shit. But if it became, if you ended up getting outed as a homosexual, you would be discharged from the military. Obviously, this has all changed now. And at the time, this was when it had changed. And so this guy came on board, he took over my billet on board the ship in the ship's office, and he was gay, which was fine. But the thing was, he was one of those guys. He played the, anytime you told him to do something that he didn't want to do, he would say, I'm not doing that. And if you gave him shit about it, he would complain that he was being bullied because he was gay. He played the, is this because I'm gay card on every single opportunity. And everybody on board just got sick of him. And eventually, literally after 2 months, they kicked him off the ship. And that billet then became available again. And I'm like, yeah, I'll have that. So I was supposed to spend 2 years ashore. I only spent 2 months and then straight back on board HMS Newcastle for another 18 months. And then the ship was going into, it was being decommissioned towards the end of that. So they were asking for people to extend their draft in order to take the ship into refit. I went, yep, I'll extend for another 8 months. So I was supposed to spend 18 months on board that ship, and I ended up spending nearly 4 years, and I loved almost every minute of it. Somebody just, yes. I just noticed Make-A-Wish Foundation has just added an edit. There's a sort of model of HMS Belfast, and that was one of the things, completely unrelated to his actual question, but HMS Belfast. the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. At one point during the movie, and this isn't much of a spoiler, they get intercepted because their mission gets called off, but they go ahead anyway, and they get intercepted by a British destroyer. But it's not a destroyer. I think it was HMS Violet. Can't remember the name of the ship specifically. That's ringing bells. In the movie, it was HMS Violet. They get intercepted by a British destroyer and stop, abort the mission, so on and so on. And it's HMS Belfast, which is not a destroyer. It's a town class cruiser. And I mean, it's a light cruiser, but I don't know if you've actually seen the town class cruisers. Those of you who play World Warships have seen them, obviously. But they're really, really big. Right? They're bigger than some countries' heavy cruisers. They're absolutely bloody massive and very, very well armed. And they're absolutely not destroyers. You can kind of tell the difference. Which begs the question, why? Because obviously they didn't take HMS Belfast out of London, sail it out to sea and film it. It was a CGI HMS Belfast. But if you're going to CGI a ship, which is supposed to be a destroyer, why CGI a light cruiser? If you can make it up, it can look like whatever you want because it's completely CGI. So why not make it the destroyer that it's supposed to be? And why make the Belfast? And I think the reason was that there is a scene where they're standing on the deck. They obviously filmed it on board HMS Belfast because, it's there, it's available, and it's a World War II ship. So we'll film this scene, and they filmed it in front of the guns. Very distinctive, 152mm guns, triple turrets, one super firing, two at the front of the ship. So possibly that's why, instead of actually CGIing up a destroyer, they CGI'd up the Belfast. But then just don't film it there. If you're going to film on the Belfast, film it on the deck with the camera pointing in a direction where you cannot tell that you're on board a town-class cruiser. Or even better, go to Chatham Dockyard and film it on board HMS Cavalier, because it is a World War II destroyer. There's just some of the utterly bizarre choices that they made in this movie that didn't make any sense whatsoever and could have so easily been avoided, which is one of the reasons why I just couldn't get along with that movie. Anyway, I've gone completely off track here. How are we doing for time? Oh, half an hour in. We're good. The next question, it's a 2-line question. I ended up spending 10 minutes answering it. Anyway, moving on to Bearcat Racing. G'day, Jingles. Bear says meow. Hello, Bear. First off, great to hear everything went well with the operation and your recovery. It was a little hard to hear after my own hospital experience and health problems. Well, I hope you're okay. I was wondering if you thought about using this experience and from the time in the Navy to write some kids' books. Some suggestions are as follows. Terry the Turtlehead Turd's Wayward Adventure. Silly Sally and her problematic green diarrhea. Nigel the Naughty Navy Boat enters port from behind, and Thomas the Taint Engine. Cheers and pats for the floofs. It's funny you should mention that. Well, I've never actually considered writing anything like that, but there's actually there's a book publisher here in the UK that primarily does children's books called Ladybird, and they would do these. The books were only like 30-40 pages, and they were like hard cardboard cover, very cheap, and they were great for your kids. When I was, going back into the dim past of the 1970s. And because I loved reading, and Ladybird books were a really cheap gift that my grandparents and my parents could get for me, so they were great. But I've noticed along the lines of stuff like Nigel the Naughty Navy Boat enters port from behind, Ladybird have started doing these books, but for adults, and they're just like this sort of thing, Terry the Turtlehead's Turd's Wayward Adventure, and they're absolutely hilarious. They're a fantastic novelty gift for an adult. But while I have never actually thought of or had anything to do with writing children's books, it's great seeing this question because it just reminded me of something that I hadn't thought about and had completely forgotten. Right before I joined the Navy, well, actually it started when I was still in high school, and I had a friend called Lucy, really good friend and fantastic family, and her mother in particular, Isabel, got a gig writing children's books. And it was basically stories that she used to tell her children when they were babies, about a family of foxes. And she got approached by a publisher to write this down to do a series of children's books. But she needed an illustrator. The publisher wasn't going to supply an illustrator for her. She had to find one. Not sure how that worked, but anyway, that was the situation. And I was a pretty good artist. And so Lucy said, "Oh, Paul, Paul will do it." So she asked. I said, "Yeah, absolutely, I'd love to do that." So I did the illustrations of this family of foxes and their adventures with all the woodland animals and all that sort of thing for these books that Lucy's mother Isabel was writing. I don't think they ever actually got published, but the illustrations did go to the publisher. And 3 weeks before I was due to head down to HMS Raleigh, the Royal Navy basic training establishment, in order to join the Navy, I got a letter from the publisher with an offer of work to do the illustrations for another 3 children's books. Nothing to do with Lucy's mother Isabel, just they needed artists to illustrate these other books that they had. This was 3 weeks before I went to join the Navy. And because I was joining the Navy, I had to turn it down. And sometimes I think, how different would my life have been if I'd done the art thing rather than the military thing? I can pretty much guarantee I wouldn't be sitting here today recording an episode of Mingles.business or doing a live Discord Q&A. But I often sit there and just how would my life have been different if I'd taken that opportunity rather than, because it was a risk. And the safer option was joining the military because, it's a guaranteed wage and a place to sleep and so on and so on. But I sometimes wonder, and it's been years since I thought of it, but just seeing this question reminded me. So thanks, Bearcat Racing. Yeah. Well, anyway, moving on. Radogian says, "Hi Jingles, do you have any of the Warhammer 40k ships and World of Warships? If so, which Chaos God do you serve?" I think I've got 2. The Cross of Dawn and the Chaos version, the Khorne version. I can't remember what they are. They're tier 8s based on... It's been so long since I played these, I can't even remember what they're based on. But Warhammer 40k do a lot of... obviously they're not the only ones that have done World of Warships. So you get them with World of Tanks as well. I think they've got... Possibly not World of Tanks. Maybe it's the console version of World of Tanks or even the mobile version of World of Tanks. But I know you've got stuff like... I can't remember what they're called, but the Rhino with the massive, huge mortar in the front. And I'm pretty sure they've got like Lehman Russ tanks and stuff like that in there as well. But yeah, I do have 2 of them. It's the Cross of Dawn and whatever the Chaos version is. But I can't remember what they're even based on, some battleship. Because it's been so long since I've played them. But yeah, Warhammer 40k, there's a lot. And of course, you've got the... it's not long now, I suppose, before Space Marine 2 comes out. What was the latest Warhammer? Oh, of course, Chaos Gate. God, it was such a good game. Such a good game. Oh, I might go back and play through the campaign again with the... because they've got the Dreadnought now, of course, haven't they? Anyway, moving on. Getting sidetracked again. Oh, I've just noticed... Oh, no, that's the... Sorry, I just saw a quick edit, but it's a question I haven't actually answered yet, so we'll move on. We'll get to that in just a second. Dave the Board says, "Hi Jingles, hope you're doing well. What conventions, Comic Con, Tank Fest, etc. do you recommend attending?" Oh, if you haven't been to Tank Fest or Tiger Day, you should go because they are amazing. I don't really go anymore for a couple of reasons. One, once you've seen a leopard drive around the arena 3 or 4 times, it's... I've been there, I've seen that, I've done it. Also, it's not usually the sort of thing I can go to and just enjoy, because I am who I am, and I don't get to take... I spend more time with, the tank... I spend more time meeting and greeting than I do actually seeing the stuff at the event, so I don't really get to attend the event. It's more of a meeting you lot. And the Tank Museum have been really good about that in the past, organising it and giving me a place to sit and meet everybody, and making sure that it's as comfortable as possible for you not queuing up to get a couple of seconds to say hello and shake my hand, get an autograph and what have you. But it's not really a fun day out. It is for you, but when I go there, it's basically working, and I don't get to see stuff. So I tend to avoid that sort of thing now. But I could definitely recommend London Film and Comic Con. Not just because of everybody in costume, but they also actually have movie and TV star guests that you can get your picture taken with and get autographs and so on and so on. They're very, very good for that. And then there's MCM Comic Con, which tends to not really have guests. I mean, they have some, but nobody goes to MCM to meet the guests because that's not what it's about. It's about turning up in costume, meeting everybody else in costume, and buying merchandise. Mostly people just go to show off their costumes and just have a good day with all of the cosplayers, because it's like when you go to London Film and Comic Con, a lot of people turn up in costume, but most people don't. When you go to MCM Comic Con, it's very hard to spot somebody who isn't in costume. Most people turn up wearing something, and it's some of the costumes are just incredible. So that's really, really good for that. Next question, and this is the one that I thought I was getting mixed up with earlier, comes from Flimsy Lunch Tray. His edit concerning TV series recommendations, the HBO series The Pacific. Yeah, The Pacific was really... This was the one that HBO did after Band of Brothers, with Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg producing, because Band of Brothers was so amazingly good and massively successful and stupidly profitable for HBO as well. And then, of course, Spielberg and Hanks came back and said, we're going to do another one. It's based on 2 books, With the Old Breed and Helmet for My Pillow, and it's about the Marines in the Pacific. And HBO said, oh, yeah, absolutely. Band of Brothers was so great, we'll definitely do that. How much do you want for it? You want how much? Because Spielberg and Hanks basically doubled their price because of how successful Band of Brothers was. So HBO went along with it, and The Pacific didn't do as well. I really enjoyed it. It wasn't as good as Band of Brothers, but I mean, that had set such an amazingly high bar to follow. It was very difficult for anything to be as good as Band of Brothers. Pacific was still good, but it didn't do as well as Band of Brothers, and it was way more expensive for HBO to do because of how much Spielberg and Hanks were asking. And so they made a profit on it, but not much. And that scared them off from doing anything else. Which is why they never did a third. I think they wanted to do one based on another Stephen Ambrose book, Wild Blue Yonder, which was about the 8th Air Force. But HBO were like, nope, too expensive. And so that never happened. But Flimsy Lunch Tray's actual question is, hello, Supreme Overlord Jingles. Have you ever been to any of the Scandinavian countries? And if so, what's your experience like? I'm an American who lives in Norway, and I love living here. Yes. Let's see. I've been to Denmark. I've been to Norway. I've been to Sweden, and that's it. I'm trying to remember where in specific. I mean, Copenhagen in Denmark, which was great. Very, very friendly people. Norway, I think it was Kristiansand, and it was basically just a refueling stop. And it was absolutely freezing. It was the middle of winter. But I remember actually quite enjoying it. There wasn't a lot there. It was just a tiny little place with a refueling jetty. And I just remember the beer being absolutely ridiculously expensive. But it was all right. Hardly representative of Norway as a whole. I mean, it's a tiny little place. I don't know what the population was, but it barely qualified as a town. Certainly wasn't a city. And then Sweden, been a couple of times. Once with the Navy, and I can't remember exactly where in Sweden it was. But then, of course, I went to the Swedish Tank Museum, Arsenalen. Which it was a hell of a drive to get there from the place we were staying, but 100% worth it. Really, really nice little museum. Lots and lots of amazing and unique stuff in there. And the food in Sweden, I remember, in particular the fish, was just astonishingly good, which you'd expect, I suppose. I mean, it's a Scandinavian country, obviously fish. And a surprisingly good selection of IPAs as well. It was like IPAs were just catching on as a big thing in Sweden at the time. And so all the bars were offering this huge selection of IPAs. You know where that stuff comes from, by the way? It's a British military thing. IPA, India Pale Ale. You know why it's called India Pale Ale rather than just Pale Ale? It's because the British Army in India, or the Indian Army, I suppose, they had a beer ration. But the beer would be brewed in England and then sent by ship to India, sailing ship. and it took a month or two to get there. And the beer would be stale by the time it got there, and so it wasn't good for anybody. So the breweries formulated this special brand of ale, pale ale, that stayed fresh for longer, and they called it India Pale Ale because it was specifically for shipping to the British Army in India, and that's where it comes from. That's what IPA is. Don't know why I bothered mentioning that, but I thought, whatever, sidetrack, but interesting anyway. Next question, and I think we're probably going to have to make this the last one, comes from Volker802. So my apologies to Ben, Marine and Pej, whose questions are next, but I need to put this show to bed. But Volker802 says, morning Jingles, hope your treatment's going well. Have you heard of the game GHPC? Oh, Gunner Heat PC. Yeah, it's a tank simulator game. I had a go at that when it was in early access. I don't know if this was probably a year ago. It's obviously come along leaps and bounds since then. I've seen a couple of YouTube videos on it, and it does look really, really good. But it's made by a very, very small development team, so don't expect, Call of Duty standard graphics. But the graphics are not bad. But my issue was I can't remember which mission it was. Well, I can remember what happened. I just can't remember the name of the mission. It was head to a specific point on the map and intercept any Russian tanks trying to head through this gap in the forest. And I think I might have encountered a bug because I headed to the spot on the map. I'm about 80% sure I was in the right place. So this might have been on me. And then I sat there for 10 minutes and nothing happened. I was like, yeah, I'll wait until they've done a bit more development on this. But it does sound like the sort of thing it's worth getting back into, since they've had at least a year of development since the last time I tried it. But yeah, basically it's a tank simulator game based on the Cold War. Masses of Russian armoured divisions pushing through the Fulda Gap, for example, and NATO lining up to try to stop them. And he's also got an edit for a suggestion, watching an anime called Zippang. It's about a modern Japanese self-defense force ship travelling back in time to the Battle of Midway. Oh, that sounds interesting. I don't know if they did a movie about, well, not specifically about that. The Final Countdown, starring Kirk Douglas, amongst other people, where I think it was the USS Nimitz went through a time warp and ended up a couple of 100 miles to the northwest of Pearl Harbor on a certain day in 1941. And again, similar situation. Good movie. You can probably watch it for free because it's so old on Amazon Prime or possibly even Netflix. And you might be able to find some way of watching it for free using other methods, which I couldn't possibly condone. But yeah, The Final Countdown, similar sort of thing, just not anime. Starring Kirk Douglas, made in the 70s, I think. Tomcats versus Zeros. Great movie. Anyway, that is going to have to be it, because we've been going for nearly an hour, so my apologies to anybody whose questions I didn't get around to, but thank you for all turning up and posting the questions anyway. I must remember I'm going to have to go back and review this, because I know there was something I was supposed to answer. I couldn't at the time, and I need to put down as a comment in this video for when it goes up as Mingles with Jingles on Monday, so I'll have to remember to do that when I come to do the edit. But other than that, thanks to everybody who turned up in person here for my first Saltmine Discord Q&A, back in the saddle post-surgery. And thank you to everybody who's watching this as Monday's episode of Mingles with Jingles. Hope you've all had a great weekend. Or if you're here live, I hope you're all still having a great weekend. And as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.